Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Gary.
And this is Daniel.
Welcome. It's good to see you all again.
Yes.
It's good to be gathered. We've had a handful of responses from folks who have emailed in and would like some answers to some of their questions.
Yeah.
And tonight, this is pretty exciting. This one comes from Vinny from Arkansas. Shout out, first of all, to Vinny for reaching out to us, and apparently somebody in his 12-step group who had mentioned that they'd been listening to our podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you. Glad to have you on board. And Vinny, we would like to spend just a second tonight and see if we can answer some of your questions. So I am going to read what Vinny had sent to us. He said, someone from my 12-step group here in Arkansas told me about your podcast. I was uncertain at first. I'm going to be honest, Vinny, so was I. But I found that your honesty and sincerity about your addiction comes through, and I'm still new into my recovery. Congratulations, first of all, for finding recovery. That's
Absolutely.
That is
That's remarkable, yeah. I'm wondering what some things you actively do to avoid temptation. And then he says, because I feel like temptation is constantly bombarding me every day. Yeah, I that's a great question, and I think it's something that we can certainly spend some time on, because there's no question about it that I think each one of us in our own universe, in our own world, whether we're here in our state or you're in yours, and but there's no question about it. There's lots of information coming our way that we see every day, that we hear every day, that really affects our addictive behavior. So a couple of things I think that jump out to me. First and foremost, congratulations on being part of a 12-step. I think that's, and having somebody within your 12-step, I think that you can reach out to, connect with. That's what that group is intended to do, right? I mean, that's really what that's about. And I think that anything you can do and connect with those people in that 12-step group is going to be a massive help. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm hoping you have a sponsor and that you take some time to connect with that sponsor and anyone else in the group that you feel comfortable with at any time, day or night, such that you, because in a lot of cases, just being able to talk about something at the moment where you're having that difficult moment is really helpful.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So...
one thing I'd like to point out.
Sure.
It sounds like Vinny is early in his recovery.
Right.
And so temptation is just part of the game.
Right.
You know, it's something that you get to deal with, and you know, you can't sterilize your environment. So you're always going to be presented with something, and you've got all kinds of thought processes and habits and things like that are going to exert their influence on you. Yeah. So don't think that you're doing anything wrong because you're still being tempted. Right. You know, it's very, very, very typical and quite honestly, something that you'll always deal with. Now, the upside to that is that you get better at dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I'm not going to say that it gets easier, but you get much better at it.
Right. I was going to add also that one of the classic issues that goes along with addictive behavior is this idea that we can control everything.
Yeah.
And obviously in this space, it's impossible to control the influences that the world asserts itself on us. So as we walk into a shopping mall, as whatever it is that's going on, we don't get to control all of those things. We don't get to look at somebody else and say, and it crosses my mind often, what were you thinking when you put that on this morning? Mm-hmm. But sometimes, and I think our counselor's been fantastic at pointing this out, that sometimes that they don't dress thinking about me. Mm-hmm. They dress with whatever it is that they're comfortable with dressing with, and how
or whatever's clean in their
whatever's
closet,
clean
maybe,
in their closet,
or
perhaps.
maybe just what they have.
Yeah,
it could be all those things. So some of the things that we do, that I like to do when I'm walking through space like that, where I know full well, like a mall, for instance, where I can't control those kinds of thoughts or those kinds of things that I'm seeing, I can control my thoughts. I like to see the person. I'm interested in seeing faces and eyes and trying to understand. Instead of seeing body parts, I want to see faces, and I want to see I want to try and understand from their eyes what it is that possibly is going through in their mind. And I think what I find more often than not is that most of the people are experiencing pain and difficulty and trauma, and when I can relate to that, when I can experience that by just passing, then I feel much more empathetic to them, and I don't see them as parts and pieces. I see them as people who are having a a mortal experience of some type.
Sure.
I mean, for me, when I quit trying to resist, avoid temptation, because it's going to be there, and because I was always worried about, I got to avoid this temptation and that, I was in this kind of state of anxiety.
Sure.
Which really, and this may be something that, he's feeling, and when you just, face it head on, because it's going to be there. You can't avoid it. We can't control that, like we've said.
Sure.
And realize, okay, that temptation's going to be there. What am I going to do in those cases? Like, we've talked about safety plans and things like that. Right. So if you're going to a swimming pool, come up with a plan, because that temptation's going to be there. What are you going to do? If it's a family event at the swimming pool, you have to be there. It's not like you can avoid it. So come up with a game plan of how you're going to deal with that. When you see someone in a bikini at the pool, how are you going to deal with that? Like you said, look at the face, the eyes, not the parts.
Right.
Look at the human being instead of the things that you would normally lust over. That's a great idea.
And think through what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I think through, okay, when I'm presented with this is what I'm going to think about. And I really like Mike's strategy. Another thing is, maybe you're finding yourself at home alone, or, wherever it is you find yourself acting out. Do the same kind of thing there too. Create a plan for yourself. Know what you're going to do if you're in those kind of situations.
Yeah.
I will tell you that one of the most effective things that I found was really, really helpful for me was when I was faced with a temptation or the desire to relapse, I would send a huge text to everybody
universe.
in my list.
Right.
Everybody in my list, I'd send everybody a text. And at the time my phone was set so that I could send out individual texts to multiple people at the same time. And I would literally write out a text and I'd send it to everybody that was in my 12-step group, that was in my group therapy, anybody who had agreed to be a support for me, I would send it out. Yeah. And I would usually find that just typing the text out and hitting that send button was enough to take care of the problem. And then you get to spend the next 40 minutes
talking to all the
people who are going to respond and reach back out to you. So having those kind of networks is really important. And you also need to commit and be willing to do that for somebody else.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other thoughts I had too. I remember I had a call one day from one of the individuals from one of our groups who was, I believe, in the south of France. And he called me because he was looking out his window at a room across the way and had noticed somebody there who was some state of undress. And he was freaking out. He was literally sort of, oh my word. And my response to him was that, yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to masturbate. And I think that's a relevant point for all of us to realize is that, okay, the world is going to happen. Things happen out there that we can't control. Things exist, but we're committed to our recovery. We're committed to ourselves, that we want to live differently. And that commitment is deep-seated. It's not based on a relationship with a spouse or a girlfriend. It's not based on anything other than the fact that I myself am sick and tired of living this kind of a lifestyle.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's important to understand, that if I'm committed in that way, just because I see something doesn't mean that I have to go home and think about it
and do something,
and do something about it. And I think that's relevant.
Yeah, it is. And it's also really important that you've spent the last X amount of years training yourself that's what you do. When you see this kind of stimulation or whatever it might be, that is what you do next.
Right.
And part of working your recovery is to slow that down and recognize that's what's going on inside your head.
Yes.
You got to slow that down and interfere with it and have all of these safety plans to deal with that kind of stuff.
Well, and another factor here, I'm just kind of rethinking through the wording. It sounds like he's really early on, so he's probably going through some withdrawal as
Yeah.
well, and that might be
That's
a
a relevant
factor in
point.
here too.
Sure. Really good point. Really good point. Yeah. I think also it's important to bring up, you may be in as you're listening to this podcast, you may be in a very healthy spot right now thinking that, you know what, all those issues are a mile away from here right now. And it's in that time that you really want to do some evaluation of, if I were to get some sort of stimuli in my universe, where would I go to act out? Well, and 9 times out of 10, it would probably be on your phone. It might be at a computer. It might be at a handful of different things. And I think it's really important to talk about maybe some first order changes at this particular juncture, because limiting access to those kinds of things give you just enough time for you to get back into your senses.
Anything to slow that process down.
That's right. Yeah. So I happen to have an Apple phone, and I know that there are others here sitting at the table that have Apple phones as well. That some of these times these aren't easy to fix, but I don't have on my own personal device. I don't have access to Safari. That's one of those things that's completely gone. In addition to that, I've removed the capability of adding apps and a variety of different things like that, so that I can limit that particular thing. We had entered that in by a code to make those things disappear. And unfortunately, we don't remember the code, so those aren't coming back to my phone anytime. And I will tell you that once in a while it comes up. My kids will say, "Hey, Dad, why don't you Google this particular thing?" And I'll say, "I don't have the internet on my phone." And though the internet still has to be part of my plan, I can't make that go away. I don't have the capacity to search. So my advice is that when you're sitting at home and you're in a good healthy spot, evaluate the places where opportunities to act out are going to present themselves. Where would you go immediately? Well, I would probably go to my phone, or I would go to this computer, I would go to my work computer, and do whatever it is you have to do to make those things safe. Because if even if it just slowed you down, if it just required you to take a few minutes, that's going to give you enough time to get back into your straight thinking head.
Yeah. No, I mean, with my sponsees, I've done that. I've disabled those features. They still have internet, but they can't get. Apple phones have a way of restricting adult content.
Yeah.
Not only that, we also, they gave me a list of the sites they went to, and I put those in so that those, even if by some miracle they can get to one, it definitely does not allow them to go to those sites. So if you can get your sponsor to help you out with that, they have the code, you don't have it, or even your spouse or significant other.
Yeah.
Anyone else other than you that has that it makes it so you can't go to those places. Yeah. Yes, you're still going to probably find other ways, but at least this is less easy access route.
What is the saying? Locks only keep honest people honest.
That's right.
Yeah.
I will tell you that blocking sites, because I'm self-employed, I will tell you that I went down the path of trying to block sites on my work computer, and I have found that to be a real exercise in futility, because it's almost as if every new day, there's these new sites that would come up, and so I have tried. I've tried other avenues. I've discovered that when I get on the computer and I need to access the internet, oftentimes I'll just move out into a common area where other people can see me. With my phone, again, I've blocked literally all the capacity to do any kind of a search on my phone, just for those very reasons. So my point being is that, and I hope you take that to heart, Vinny, is that maybe you consider the places where you would normally access the internet and access those sites, because all it's going to take is for just a few minutes to get past that, and that's just one more minute, one more hour, one more day of clean time.
Right.
Yeah.
And we do it a moment at a time.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, so just as a nice broad stroke, you slow that process down as much as you can with your first order changes, and then you get somebody involved as quickly as you can.
Correct.
As soon as you see that coming, because a lot of times these things will start building before you realize it. You're going to get into your pattern. So get somebody involved as soon as you recognize what's going on. And a lot of times, something that helped me was, let's see, I got to think how to say this. Okay, there were some times that I felt like I was being tempted, but I wanted to reach out to people, or maybe tempted wasn't the right word. there were times when I felt a little off,
Sure.
but I wasn't really in a place where I felt like I was tempted or feeling lapsy. I just knew that I was off.
Right.
And one of the ways that I would deal with that is, again, I would go back to that group and I would check in on everybody else.
Yes.
How are you guys doing?
Right.
You know, and that usually kind of set me straight. You know,
Yeah.
if I was feeling just a little bit off or could see something coming down the road,
That's a great idea.
I'd touch base and see,
Yeah.
you know, is there anything I can do for you? And because that really, really helps.
Yeah. One of the other things I'm going to add in here as well that I've discovered for myself is the power of connection. Now, obviously, a counselor has been beating that into our head for quite some time, and Vinny doesn't share enough in his email as to whether he's married, not married, you know, significant other, whatever the case may be. But I will tell you that seeking out those that are significant in our lives and spending time with those people is really powerful.
Yeah.
If you're living at home with mom, you know, stay there till you're 50, however long you've got to. But you know, but stay with mom and be close by, so that when you have those moments, that you can, you know, you can step in and say hi to mom, because that always seems to affect it. Now, I'm just teasing about staying
not,
there till
yeah,
50.
maybe not till you're 50.
But the point being is that significant others in our lives have a really, really powerful effect.
Another thing to keep in mind is you can go to a meeting.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can. And
You know, in fact, when you first start, they say 90 meetings in 90 days.
correct.
You know, and that has a couple of things. Number one, it's going to get you in the right mindset, and it's going to put you in contact with people that are willing to help or in similar situations. It's going to build that support structure, and it's going to put you in a situation where you're going to be able to serve some other people
Yes.
along the
Yeah.
way.
Great
It's-
opportunities.
yeah, fantastic.
I have
So
a
it's a good short-term and a good long-term strategy.
That's fantastic advice. I have a marriage counselor right now that has pointed out on multiple occasions that the way we best reset is through hugging. And they're so he's pointed out multiple times that when we come home, we seem to be off, angry, whatever the case may be, our mind on something else. That spending time in a quality hug with that important person in our life really has a way of settling us down. And oftentimes the desire to act out, in a lot of cases, comes from an unmet need.
Yeah.
A
A disconnect of
a
some
disconnect
sort.
of some sort. So, just spending a minute connecting with that significant other in a meaningful hug can reset all of that in our own body instrument to help us move past a lot of that we're experiencing.
I know I'm not a pet person, but I bet people who are could probably get a little bit of
Dogs somewhat help.
yeah, a little bit.
I mean, I'd also suggest maybe looking at patterns, looking at things in your life, kind of do an evaluation. What are things, you know, when are you feeling the most triggered? You know, if it's, when you're driving to work, are you passing things that are maybe you're not paying attention completely, but it's in your eyesight and your brain is picking up on those things.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, maybe you're driving down the street and you pass a lingerie store or a strip club or something like that, or some billboard with a girl in a bikini. You know, even though you're paying attention to the road, your brain is still taking that information in and it's feeding it to you. And so maybe, you know, evaluate that. And, you know, if that is the case, take a different a road,
different route to work.
or maybe it's on days where you're wearing a particular outfit. Or you're doing particular things around your house where, you know, maybe you haven't brushed your teeth today or done the dishes and you're just grumpy and irritable and it just seems like everything's ready to set you off, you know, and kind of do those things in advance to get you into a healthy place.
In fact, one of the things that I had to do in my early recovery was I would change the route to work, or I even had to change the way that I would get ready for work. I had to change the order in which I got myself ready for the day, so it didn't, because that would jumpstart that
Yeah, absolutely.
ritual, I guess.
Yeah, the ritual.
Something I'll also point out really quick is remember the acronym HALT. Okay, remember this whole slow down thing, but you stop. Okay, because a lot of times, if you're feeling tempted or activated or triggered or whatever it is, sometimes remember that addiction is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel that way because you have a need that's not being met.
Yep,
In fact,
correct.
it was Daniel's comment that reminded me of this. And so there's this little acronym. It says it's HALT, and that means hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
take a minute and slow down and saying, okay, I'm feeling this way. Why is that? Am I taking care of some of my basic needs? Because maybe I'm not actually this. Maybe I'm just hungry.
Yeah.
Right.
or thirsty, or maybe I'm upset about something, or maybe that I'm lonely and I need to connect with somebody, or maybe I'm tired. Maybe what I just need is a good night's rest,
Right.
and address some of those primary needs, and it'll do a couple things. Number one, it'll help you in that moment. But if you will do that consistently and you're taking care of yourself, it will help overall as well.
Yeah.
You know, when you're at your best, you can deal with things a lot better.
And there's another one, it's blast. So, which when you're bored, lonely, angry, stressed, or tired.
Oh, that's also very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So both of those are great, just to kind of evaluate, where am I at? Am I bored? Am I lonely? Am I hungry? Am I angry at something? Generally, it does come from one of those. We just finished a Sage 1 group last night, and they watched the movie Changing Lanes, and there's a scene where he's like, Samuel L. Jackson, he is an alcoholic, and he's like, well, I didn't drink. And he's like, so what? You're addicted to chaos. It's not about the drink. And sometimes that is. It's not about,
Yep.
the acting out thing. It could be that you're angry or you're stressed or tired.
Yeah. Remember that alcoholics don't drink because they're thirsty.
Yes.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
you can apply that to whatever your drug of choice is.
Yes.
You're not engaging in that because you are
Right.
Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
because you're
fill in
coping
the
with
blank.
something.
Yeah, it's because you're
some
dealing-
emotional response that's
you're
coming out.
escaping from something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, the reality of it is that when you find yourself aroused in some fashion, some way, in a lot of ways, that's a good indicator to you, because that's what you've relied on for so long, that it's a good indicator to you that there is an unmet need, that you really ought to be evaluating that what is it. I mean, we've just given you a couple of acronyms, but there are a variety of others, but just the opportunity to evaluate where you're at in your life, what's going on,
Yeah.
what's causing these things that my mind wants me to escape from. Remember, this is a disease of escape. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as I have a project that's due that I'm avoiding.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Or
It's even a way that we've come to reward ourselves. Maybe something really good has happened in your life, and
Yeah.
that's another time that we choose to act out.
yeah, I think that's fantastic. If you're a student at school, obviously there's constant pressure about this particular assignment or that particular assignment and this test that's coming up. And those were always times I found in my own personal life, and then I found in those that I sponsor, that schooling is just a constant pressure.
Yeah.
And we're pretty good at some cases about saying, well, I'm not dealing with that this weekend. Today's Friday, and I'm going to go play. I'm going to go do whatever. But those are all constant pressures in our life that we have to learn to deal with in a healthy way rather than an unhealthy way.
Correct.
And tackling those things face on or head on is the best way to deal with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I was going to point out, I believe your email said, because you feel like temptation is a constant bombardment every day. All right. Now, also keep in mind that each one of those temptations is also an opportunity.
Yes.
It's an opportunity to do the next right thing. It's an opportunity to practice your recovery. It's an opportunity to reach out to somebody and connect with them. So yeah, it's rough, and we've all been there, but keep in mind, it's also an opportunity. And remember that you don't have to act out on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are a variety of tools, just a fantastic list of tools, I think, that are very, very helpful, real helpful to really just sort of understand and to practice our own health. Some of the other things I think that I've always done, I participate in a variety of different groups. We've talked a little bit about some of our Sage group, which is just a group experience with a workbook that we work through. Obviously, a 12-step, working the steps is a great place to. When I find myself, I'm aroused in some way, just immersing myself in step work or immersing myself in reading. Recovery literature always seems to help out quite a bit, and that seems to alleviate a lot of the pressure and stress. Those were really helpful.
If you haven't written a letter to yourself, do it.
That's
Yeah.
a great tool.
That's a fantastic tool. I still have my letter
Yeah.
in my wallet. It's falling apart now. I probably couldn't unfold it without it blowing away in the wind, but
It served you a lot of years.
it served me a lot of years. So you'll get yourself, when you're in a good place, you sit down and you write your letter to yourself and keep that with you.
Yeah, I
And then pull that out and read it if you
And
need
even
to.
going for a walk.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling tempted, go for a walk.
Just the change.
Just change the environment. Just go walk. Don't think of anything. Don't berate yourself. Just breathe and walk. If you have some earbuds, throw in some music that's you enjoy, that's not angry music, something that's enjoyable. And definitely don't put in Disturbed or anything like that. But just listen to something you enjoy and just go for a walk. Even if it's 5-10 minutes, just something that stops, that gets you away and can kind of changes things up and can alleviate that pressure. You'll be amazed at how often, if you do that, that'll even change things for you.
I think something else I would recommend too is sort of visiting a relapse chain.
Yeah.
Because I would suspect that, where you're at today probably won't be where you're at tomorrow, and where you were at yesterday isn't where you're at today. And so oftentimes if we look at our last relapse, we'll find some real similarities about what's happening and what's not happening.
Yeah, those patterns.
There's a lot of pattern to it. I often found that a lot of my acting out behavior, believe it or not, started with a sports page. I would hop on my phone and start, and apparently my mind just simply knew that when I started with this sports page, if it was ESPN and I wanted to see what's happened in the world of sports, obviously there's a lot happening with the NC2A tournament right now, and so I would be on my phone a lot, but my mind would literally know that within some period of time between the time I turned on this sports page to down the road, that I'm going to be in places I shouldn't be.
And your body starts to prepare for that.
That's exactly right.
So for those of you who don't know, a relapse chain is a tool that you use where you'll track your thoughts and events back in time to see where that kind of started.
Yes.
Why did I think this? Well, because of this. Well, why did I do that? Well, because and you track that back as far as you can. And you'll be surprised. You might find that your cycle could be a couple
months
days
down the road.
Yeah, weeks, months, and you might even have 2 or 3 going on at the same time.
Exactly.
So that's a pretty healthy exercise.
Yeah.
And another thing, maybe even avoid social media for a while. There's been several guys where they've gone to like Instagram or YouTube, and it led them down that same path, like you said, starting with the sports
when I say
page.
make a connection with somebody, I mean call somebody.
Yes.
The Alcoholics Anonymous, one of their big things they say is nothing is heavier than your phone when you're.
That's right.
You're being.
And I think that means calling. That
Yes.
doesn't mean texting.
Yeah. Mass text too, whatever you need to do. But yeah, reach out to somebody and keep in mind that whatever it is you're feeling and whatever it is you're dealing with, it is a temporary situation and it will pass.
Yeah.
And you'll get better at it. So don't give up. Make some really good connections. Reach out to people. Be proactive in that too.
Right.
Offer. Ask people how they're doing. Yeah, I cannot tell you the number of times when I thought, I'm feeling a little off. I'm going to reach out to somebody, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I was right in the middle of a problem. I'm so glad that you reached out.
Right.
And that's really helpful too.
Yeah.
Helping somebody else out during a time of their crisis is a big deal. That's a really good point. So, well, Vinny, I hope we've addressed some of the thoughts and concerns and questions that you had.
Yeah. Thank you so much for reaching out to us.
Absolutely.
And
if you don't feel like we've addressed this topic sufficiently, please feel free to reach out to us
Right.
again. We would like to see if we can. We'll keep working it.
give our best to your 12-step group too.
Yes, tell them all that they're doing remarkable work. Anybody that's engaged in this particular effort is just tops in my book, because this is not an easy thing.
If you're being tempted, write us an email. You could drop us a line too.
That's right.
And even if we have answered your questions, you have others. Feel free to reach out.
Feel free to reach out. So, with that, I'll say this is do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, or have any suggestions for future episodes, please contact us at 12steppodcast@gmail.com. That is 12th steppodcast@gmail.com. As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.